Ladies and gentlemen, fellow seekers of truth and meaning, today I ask you to journey with me through a thought that echoes through the soul of every man who has ever suffered, persevered, and risen again. The thought is simple yet heavy, that God tests and breaks man not to destroy him, but to build him so that through him a greater legacy may be born. This is not merely a spiritual proposition. It is a universal law woven into the fabric of human experience. In every great life, every profound transformation, every towering legacy we admire, there lies a story of pain, a season of breaking, and a choice to either crumble or climb. Whether you believe in God as a divine being, as fate, as the universe itself, or simply as the voice within, the principle remains unshaken before a man can be truly used for something great. He must first be broken and rebuilt. Look to the ancient stories, the sacred texts, the legends we still whisper. Abraham was asked to sacrifice his own son. Moses was exiled, speech impaired and unsure. Joseph was betrayed by blood, enslaved, imprisoned, and forgotten before he was crowned. David, the king, was hunted like a beast. Job, a righteous man, was stripped of everything, wealth, children, health, and dignity, so that in the ashes his faith would be tested. Why this pattern? Why must the process of divine preparation begin with pain? It is because comfort does not create character. Ease never forges strength. The fire is not to destroy the metal, but to purify it. The breaking of a man is not the end of him. It is the beginning of what he was meant to become. God does not break in cruelty. He breaks in craftsmanship. He does not test to shame. He tests to reveal. The man who is never tested never knows who he is. The man who is never broken never discovers what he is made of. We often pray for blessings, for greatness, for legacy, but we forget what we are truly asking for. We are asking to be refined. We are asking to be prepared. We are asking to be built into something worthy of remembrance. And that, my friends, is not a painless process. It is a journey of being stripped of ego, of losing what is false, of confronting our deepest fears, our greatest limitations. It is a journey of surrendering control, of walking through nights so dark that even faith seems silent. But in that breaking, something magnificent begins to stir. In that silence, something eternal begins to speak. A man who has faced the pit and risen from it no longer fears life. A man who has lost everything and still stands has discovered the foundation that can never be shaken. That man is no longer ordinary. That man has become legacy. History remembers not the comfortable, but the courageous. It remembers not those who escaped trial, but those who walked through fire and emerged transformed. Mandela spent 27 years in prison before he changed a nation. Lincoln battled depression and countless political defeats before he united a country. Malcolm X faced violence, betrayal, and the loss of everything before he found his voice and vision. Mother Teresa walked through spiritual dryness for decades, doubting herself, even doubting God, yet never stopping her mission to love the unloved. Why does greatness require pain? Because only in the breaking can pride be removed. Only in the fire can the impurities of fear, vanity, insecurity, and selfishness be burned away. Only in loss can we learn to value what matters, and only in emptiness can the eternal be poured in. Legacy is not built on moments of triumph alone. It is built on the unseen battles, the silent tears, the hours of loneliness, the gut-wrenching decisions that define who we are when no one is watching. God tests man not because he doubts man's strength, but because man doubts his own. And in the testing, he reveals it. He shows us that we are not weak, but we are unfinished. He shows us that the pain we curse is the very tool he uses to carve something eternal in us. Like a sculptor chipping away at a block of marble, God is not attacking the stone, he is revealing the masterpiece within. When God breaks a man, he is not discarding him. He is discarding what no longer serves him. He is removing what is not true, what is not eternal, what is not aligned with the man's highest purpose. What is left, though it may be raw, is real. And with the real, God builds. With the humbled, he empowers. With the wounded, he heals others. With the broken, he builds legacy. Let us not resent the testing, the waiting, the suffering. Let us not wish away the very process that prepares us. For every dark season has within it the seeds of light. Every fall, every failure, every betrayal is a chisel in the hand of the divine. Do not curse the process. It is making you unbreakable. Do not fear the pain. It is teaching you to feel with purpose. Do not resist the breaking. It is building in you a foundation that storms cannot move. The legacy of a man is not measured by his success, but by his endurance, by what he survived, by who he became in the storm. We see the man on the mountain, but we do not see the nights he spent in the valley. We admire his strength, but we overlook the tears that forged it. We hear the applause, but we miss the silence that taught him to stand alone. If you are in a season of testing, do not be discouraged. If you are being broken, do not run. This is not your end. This is your preparation. This is your becoming. The fire you feel is not punishment. It is the anointing of a future that is bigger than your past. You are not being buried. You are being planted. And in time, what is growing in you will rise with power. What makes a legacy is not that a man lived long or rose high, but that his life echoed beyond himself, that through him others were lifted, that his suffering was not wasted, that his breaking became the bridge for others to cross. A man broken by God and rebuilt by grace becomes a beacon, a testimony, a force of light in a dark world. His life becomes a message. His scars become scriptures. His journey becomes a guide. So let us embrace the process. Let us welcome the challenge. Let us rise each time we fall, not with bitterness, but with fire. For we were not made for ease. We were made for greatness, and greatness is born in the breaking. The legacy you are building is not just about your name, your wealth, your achievements. It is about the impact your life has on those who come after. It is about whether your children, your community, your generation will be stronger because you chose not to give up. Will they remember a man who ran or a man who rose? Will they speak of comfort or of courage, of ease or endurance? What if the very thing you are fighting, the delay, the disappointment, the heartbreak, is the hand of God shaping you? What if the very thing you want removed is the thing that is making you ready? And what if your legacy is not being lost in this season, but being written? There is no resurrection without the cross. There is no crown without the cave. There is no anointing without the crushing. So do not despise where you are. Do not envy the lives of those who have not been broken, for they may not yet be built. Be grateful that God loves you enough to prepare you. Be thankful that your life is being refined, not just rewarded. And when you come through this, and you will come through, stand tall and testify. Say, I was tested, but I did not fail. I was broken, but I did not break. I was stripped, but I found my truth. I was delayed, but not denied. And in that place, in that fire, I found my purpose. For this is how God builds a man, not through ease, but through endurance. Not through comfort, but through calling. And in that calling, through that fire, with that breaking, he builds a legacy. Breaking is preparation, not punishment. It is one of the hardest truths for the human heart to accept, especially in the midst of pain, loss, confusion, or delay. When life begins to fall apart, when relationships collapse, dreams die, health fades, or silence replaces what once felt like divine guidance, it is natural to assume we are being punished. It is natural to feel abandoned or unworthy. But the very pain we resist may be the instrument of transformation we've unknowingly prayed for. God doesn't break a man to destroy him. He breaks him to remake him. He strips away not to leave him empty, but to build him strong enough to carry what's coming. Most of us carry layers we don't realize, layers of ego, of fear, of insecurity, of false ambition. These are things that can't travel with us into the future we're called to. Legacy isn't built on surface strength. It's built on foundations that can only be laid when the scaffolding of pride is torn down. God, in his wisdom, doesn't decorate a weak structure. He rebuilds it, and rebuilding begins with breaking. It is not an act of cruelty, but of deep love. It is the love of a craftsman who sees what we can become beyond what we are. The breaking comes to separate us from illusions. We believe we are in control, that our plans are perfect, that we understand timing and direction. But in the breaking, we meet the limits of our control. We learn that strength is not self-made. It is given and tested. In being broken, we are emptied of self-reliance, of noise, of the voices that once seemed loud and persuasive. And in that emptiness, God speaks. Not always with words, but with a silence that searches the soul. He teaches us to wait. He teaches us to trust when there is nothing visible to hold on to. And in that trust, our roots grow deep. This kind of transformation doesn't happen in comfort. It doesn't happen in the praise of men or the success of plans. It happens in the quiet, in the confusion, in the wilderness. Every man who has carried something eternal had to be prepared in obscurity. The crown comes after the crushing. The vision is born in silence. The anointing is hidden in agony. And the legacy begins not when you rise, but when you are willing to fall and be reshaped. When God begins to break a man, it can feel like rejection, but it is actually selection. He is not ignoring you. He is investing in you. He is training your hands for battles you don't yet see. He is stretching your faith, not because he is distant, but because he is drawing something greater out of you. The man who has never been broken may impress people, but he cannot carry the weight of destiny. He lacks depth. He lacks the refinement that pain brings. But the broken man, he walks with quiet authority. He speaks with a wisdom that wasn't learned but earned. He no longer seeks applause because he knows the silence of the wilderness taught him more than the cheers of the crowd ever could. We must learn not to resist the process. We must stop asking why we are being broken and start asking what we are being prepared for. That shift changes everything. It gives meaning to the pain. It gives purpose to the delay. It shows us that nothing is wasted. Not the tears, not the losses, not the nights we couldn't sleep. God uses it all. He gathers every shattered piece and builds a foundation that cannot be moved. This is not just about personal development. It's about legacy. Legacy is what remains after we're gone. And only what is real, what is deeply rooted, what is forged in fire will remain. So the breaking is a gift, though it often comes disguised. It is the starting point of becoming the man whose life will matter long after he's gone. God is not punishing you, he's preparing you, and what he's building in you will outlast you. That is the power of divine breaking. That is how legacy begins. Pain shapes purpose in ways that comfort never can. When we speak of trials, losses, delays, and seasons of waiting, we're not simply referring to unfortunate events or bad luck. These moments, though often filled with sorrow and confusion, are part of a deeper process, one that reaches beyond our understanding and digs into the very fabric of who we are meant to become. Every man who has found true meaning in life has, without exception, walked through some form of pain. It is not a detour from the path, it is the path. Pain isn't a meaningless disruption of life. It is one of the most powerful tools in the hands of the divine. There is something about suffering that brings clarity. It strips away the superficial and exposes the heart. In times of pain, the noise of the world begins to fade, and we are left alone with our thoughts, our fears, and our raw, unfiltered selves. And it is in that vulnerable space that the shaping begins. When life is going smoothly, when everything is working in our favor, we can easily lose focus. Our ambitions can drift. Our purpose can become clouded by ego, by distraction, or by a desire for approval. But pain has a way of cutting through all of that. It forces us to confront what really matters. It refines what we value. It causes us to ask the deeper questions, not just what we want to do, but why we are here and who we are meant to become. The purpose of pain isn't always visible in the moment. In fact, more often than not, it feels senseless while we are in it. But over time, with perspective, we begin to see that nothing was wasted. That heartbreak prepared us to love more deeply. That failure taught us humility and resilience. That delay was protecting us from something we couldn't yet understand. That loneliness was drawing us into a deeper connection with something eternal. Pain is not the absence of purpose. It is the very soil in which purpose is planted. It softens the ground of the soul, making it ready for the seeds of destiny to grow. Think of the great stories, both ancient and modern. The ones that move us, inspire us, awaken something within us. They are not tales of ease. They are not built on moments of uninterrupted peace. They are marked by loss, by failure, by wrestling with doubt and despair. But through those dark seasons, something unshakable is born. Character is not formed in success. It is revealed in struggle. A man cannot lead others through fire if he has not walked through it himself. and he cannot carry the weight of purpose if he has not first been acquainted with pain. When we allow pain to shape us rather than harden us, something powerful happens. We become more patient, more compassionate, more aware of the needs of others. We stop needing to prove ourselves and start desiring to serve. We become less obsessed with image and more committed to substance. We stop chasing empty goals and begin aligning with the higher calling that was always waiting for us beneath the surface. Pain uncovers that calling. It breaks through the illusions and shows us where our true strength lies. It's tempting to want to escape pain, to numb it, to outrun it, or to wish it away. But the truth is, some of the most important work in our lives happens through pain. Not because pain itself is good, but because of what it produces when it is surrendered. The refining fire is never pleasant, but it is necessary. It burns away what is temporary and leaves behind what is lasting. It doesn't destroy the man, it reveals him. It doesn't take away purpose, it points him toward it. God, as the divine craftsman, does not waste pain. He uses it with precision. Each moment of suffering, each delay, each unanswered question is part of a design that stretches beyond what we can see. Just as a sculptor chisels away at stone to reveal the statue within, so does pain chip away at what is unnecessary in us. What remains is purpose, pure, undiluted, and aligned with the man we are meant to be. This is why the greatest legacies are born not from those who escaped hardship, but from those who endured it and allowed it to shape them. Pain is not the end of the story. It is the tool that reveals the meaning of the story. Legacy is forged in the fire, not in the ease of comfort or the applause of the crowd. True legacy is born in the hidden places where struggle, sacrifice, and suffering refine a man. The names we remember across generations are not those who lived easy lives, but those who endured difficulty, stood firm through storms, and rose from pain with deeper purpose. Legacy isn't handed out, it's earned in the furnace of affliction. It is not about what a man gains for himself, but about what remains after he is gone. And what remains is always the product of fire. Fire tests and reveals. It burns away what cannot endure. It purifies, strengthens, and reshapes. When a man passes through fire, he doesn't emerge the same. If he surrenders to the process, he comes out with more clarity, more conviction, and more courage. He loses the layers of pretense and self-interest, and he gains something eternal, substance. That substance is what builds legacy. It is the invisible weight behind his words, the authority in his actions, and the depth behind his silence. The world may not notice it immediately, but over time it leaves an imprint that cannot be erased. Look at the lives of those whose stories have shaped history. They were not spared hardship. In fact, they were marked by it. Their greatness was not the absence of failure or suffering. It was found in how they responded to it. They were tested by circumstances that would have broken most, and yet they endured. They remained faithful to a calling greater than themselves. Their names endure not because of what they achieved, but because of who they became in the fire. Think of men like Nelson Mandela, who spent 27 years in prison, stripped of freedom, dignity, and contact with the world. Yet in that confinement, his spirit was refined. He emerged not bitter, but better, more focused, more powerful, more able to lead. His suffering became the foundation for a legacy of reconciliation and justice. Or consider Abraham Lincoln, whose life was filled with political failures, personal losses, and national chaos. Yet from that pain, he led with depth and vision, anchoring a divided country in its most fragile moment. Even in Scripture, we see the same pattern. Joseph was betrayed, enslaved, and imprisoned before he became a ruler who would save nations. David was anointed to be king, but spent years fleeing for his life, shaped by solitude and suffering before he ever wore a crown. Jesus himself, the very model of legacy and impact, was not celebrated first. He was rejected, mocked, beaten, and crucified. His legacy came not from comfort, but from surrender in the fire of suffering. And through that suffering, he changed the world. We often desire the outcome, but resist the process. We want to leave a mark, but we shy away from what it costs. Yet there is no shortcut to legacy. There is no lasting impact without deep refining. What comes easy fades quickly. What is built in fire remains. Legacy doesn't come from moments of praise. It is rooted in seasons of silence, where a man keeps going not because he is seen, but because he is called. It grows in places where no one claps and no one notices. But God is working, shaping, chiseling, and preparing. The fire looks different for every man. For some, it's loss of family, of dreams, of stability. For others, it's isolation, where they are removed from everything familiar and forced to confront themselves. For others still, it's betrayal, disappointment, or failure. Whatever form it takes, the fire is not meant to destroy. It is meant to reveal. It shows us what we truly believe, what we are really made of, and who we are becoming. Legacy is not the story people tell while you're alive. It's the story that continues after you're gone. It is the echo of your integrity, your endurance, your sacrifice, and those things are only developed in the fire. That is why we must not run from struggle. We must not resent the refining. The very hardship we wish away may be the birthplace of the legacy we desire. The fire, though painful, is sacred. It is where the man is separated from the boy, where purpose is separated from popularity, where gold is separated from clay. The fire defines the man, and through the man it defines what will live on long after he is gone. That is how true legacy is forged. Testing reveals true strength. It is not designed to expose how weak a man is, but to awaken the power that lies dormant within him. When God allows a man to be tested, it is not because he is uncertain of that man's capacity, but because he knows there is more inside than the man himself realizes. Testing is the divine invitation to rise beyond limitation, to confront fear, to shed false confidence and step into true identity. It is not punishment, it is revelation. So often we live below our true potential, hidden beneath comfort, convenience, or fear of failure. We claim to have faith, to be strong, to be committed, but it is only in testing that such claims are proven. When everything is stable, when life is working, it's easy to believe we are strong. But strength is not measured in ease. Strength is only revealed when it is challenged. Until the wind rises, we don't know how deeply our roots go. Until the fire burns, we don't know what in us will endure. The test comes to show us, not to God who already knows, but to us and to the world what we're really made of. In every trial, there is a moment of confrontation, not just with the problem, but with ourselves. We are forced to see what we depend on, what we run to, what we believe. We are stripped of illusions. The mask falls away, the outer layer is burned, and the inner man is brought into the light. That is where the true strength begins to emerge, not the strength of appearances, not the strength of pride, but the strength of spirit, conviction, and faith. God is not interested in superficial greatness. He doesn't need the strong as the world defines it. He wants the honest, the refined, the resilient. The man who has been tested and has endured becomes something solid, something trustworthy. His words carry weight because they have been paid for. His silence speaks because it was forged in fire. He doesn't speak from theory. He speaks from survival. And survival is what gives his strength meaning. Look at the lives of men who have endured real testing. You'll find that they are not necessarily the loudest, the most charismatic, or the most celebrated. They are often the ones who walk with quiet confidence, having learned that real strength does not need to be advertised. These men have scars, emotional, spiritual, sometimes physical, but those scars are not signs of weakness. They are evidence of battles fought and overcome. And more than that, they are proof of inner reserves of strength that only the test could have awakened. Testing also brings clarity. It refines our values, redefines our purpose, and deepens our faith. It is in testing that we find out what truly matters. Many men walk through life chasing things that feel urgent but are ultimately empty. But when everything is shaken, when what once seemed secure begins to fall away, the test reveals what is eternal. It shows us what we can live without and what we cannot. It reveals that strength is not just about endurance, but about alignment with something greater than ourselves. Trials also reveal the strength of our foundations. If we have built our identity on achievement, status, or approval, the test will shake those pillars. But if our strength is built on truth, character, and relationship with God, then even the fiercest storm cannot topple us. We may bend, we may bleed, but we will not break. And in that resistance, we come to understand what it means to be truly strong, not immune to suffering, but unshaken by it. It is also in testing that we become an example to others. When a man stands in the fire and does not collapse, Others find courage in his strength. His life becomes a message. His endurance becomes a light for others walking through darkness. The test, then, is never just about the man. It is about everyone who will follow in his footsteps. His strength becomes a legacy. His resilience a roadmap. God tests us to make us, not to break us. The test does not come to define us by our failure, but to refine us through the fight. It is not the absence of difficulty that reveals who we are. It is how we respond when difficulty comes. In that response, true strength emerges. Strength that isn't shaken by fear, strength that doesn't collapse under pressure, strength that knows its source is greater than the storm. That is the strength God wants to awaken. That is the strength that only testing can reveal. The broken become beacons. It is one of the most paradoxical and powerful truths of life, that a man who has been shattered by trial and hardship and who chooses not to remain in pieces but to rise again becomes a light for others, not despite his pain, but because of it. When a man survives breaking, when he comes through the fire still breathing, still believing, still walking, he carries something within him that no textbook or title can provide. He carries evidence that healing is possible, that strength can be born from struggle, and that the human spirit, when anchored in something greater than itself, cannot be destroyed. The scars that once brought shame become stories that give others hope. The wounds that once isolated him now connect him to those still suffering. What once disqualified him in his own eyes now becomes the very proof that he has walked through something real, something refining, something sacred. People may admire the strong, but they follow the broken because the broken know the way through the dark. They've been there, they understand. And because they've survived, their voice carries an authority that cannot be faked. When a man is broken and does not quit, he becomes a symbol of possibility. Others look to him not because he has all the answers, but because he has walked through the questions. He has endured the silence, the confusion, the loss, and still stands. And that standing becomes a statement to the world that you can endure too. His life becomes a beacon, not a spotlight that draws attention to himself, but a steady flame that lights the path for others who are still stumbling in the dark. There's something uniquely powerful about a man who's walked through pain and chosen to let it shape him instead of destroy him. He doesn't hide his past. He doesn't pretend to be untouched. In fact, he leads with transparency. He speaks not from the heights of unreachable perfection, but from the trenches of shared humanity. And because of that, his words carry weight. His life resonates. His example inspires not just admiration, but transformation. Failure, too, becomes a tool in the hands of the broken man. What once seemed like defeat now becomes wisdom. The mistakes he made, the detours he took, the things he lost, none of it is wasted. He no longer hides those parts of his story. He uses them. He lets them serve as warnings, as lessons, as gentle guidance to those who are about to make the same wrong turn. He becomes a bridge between pain and purpose, between brokenness and healing. This is why we must never write off the broken. They are not damaged beyond use. They are being prepared for impact. The world doesn't need more flawless examples. It needs real ones. It needs men who are honest about their struggles and generous with the wisdom those struggles have given them. It needs men who are not afraid to speak of their darkest nights because they know those stories may help someone else survive their own. This is what it means to be a beacon, not to shine for the sake of ego, but to shine because others need the light. It's important to understand that becoming a beacon doesn't happen automatically. Not everyone who is broken becomes a light. Some stay bitter, closed off, defined by their pain, but those who choose to heal, those who decide to grow, to forgive, to rise, they are the ones who transform their pain into purpose. They are the ones who turn their scars into maps for others to follow. They refuse to let their suffering be the final chapter. They turn it into a testimony. The broken man who chooses to become a beacon does not have an easy path. He still wrestles with doubt. He still feels the sting of old wounds. But he no longer lives for himself alone. He understands that his life carries weight beyond his own comfort. He knows that others are watching, listening, learning, and so he lives with intention. He walks with humility. He speaks with grace. He lifts others because he knows what it feels like to be on the ground. In a world that chases perfection and hides its pain, the broken man who becomes a beacon is a revolutionary figure. He stands as proof that healing is possible, that purpose can rise from ashes, and that legacy is not built in spite of brokenness, but through it. His life is not just his own, it becomes a light tower for generations. And long after he is gone, that light keeps burning. That is the power of the man who refuses to be defined by his breaking. He becomes a beacon. He becomes legacy. Endurance builds eternal impact. It is not the fame a man gathers or the wealth he accumulates that defines the legacy he leaves behind, but the strength with which he endures the hardships life places in his path. The real measure of a man is found not in his moments of ease, but in how he responds when everything is falling apart. When the applause fades, when resources run dry, when the support disappears and only silence remains, that is when the foundation of legacy is laid. It is in these raw, painful, and often lonely seasons that a man is truly shaped, not into something temporary, but into something that lasts beyond his lifetime. Endurance is not about simply surviving. It is about remaining faithful through the storm, remaining courageous when fear is screaming, and choosing to move forward when retreat feels easier. A man who endures does not escape hardship. He faces it head on. He may bend, he may fall, but he does not quit. His strength lies not in being untouched by suffering, but in not allowing suffering to define or destroy him. He takes the broken pieces of his journey and keeps walking. That steady, unwavering walk, step by step, through fire and shadow, is what makes his life echo long after he's gone. The legacy of such a man is not one that people simply admire. It's one they draw strength from. His life becomes a reminder that hardship doesn't have the final word. His story becomes a source of comfort and motivation for others walking through their own valleys. It's not his perfection that speaks, but his endurance. The way he kept showing up, kept believing, kept standing, even when he had every reason to fall apart. The way he chose to continue when it would have been understandable to quit. That choice again and again is what builds something eternal. We live in a world that values speed, visibility, and immediate results. But endurance is a slow and hidden process. It rarely gets applause in the moment. It often goes unseen, yet it carries the most weight. It builds the kind of character that lasts. It creates the kind of influence that isn't loud, but lasting. A man who endures becomes immovable, not because he is hard, but because he has been deeply rooted. He has faced the storms and remained not unchanged, but unshaken in his faith and values. Those who endure with courage and conviction leave behind more than memories. They leave behind a path. They show others how to suffer well, how to rise again, how to walk with dignity in the face of defeat. Their lives become living blueprints of how to navigate hardship without losing one's soul. They become examples of how endurance is not just about getting through, but about becoming something greater through the process. This kind of impact is eternal, not because it is dramatic, but because it is real. It touches hearts. It changes lives. It outlasts trends, positions, and possessions. Endurance writes itself into the lives of others. A man who endures becomes the father whose children remember not just his achievements, but the way he loved them through hardship. He becomes the friend whose strength held others up, the leader whose quiet perseverance gave others courage, the husband who stood through struggle, the worker who remained faithful when the world was falling apart. His life becomes a message of what it means to remain. Endurance also transforms the man himself. It deepens him. It cleanses him of superficial goals and gives him clarity about what truly matters. In enduring, he finds what is eternal. He finds peace not in outcomes, but in knowing he has remained true to his purpose, his God, and his calling. That kind of peace cannot be bought or manufactured. It comes only through fire, through testing, through the long road of faithfulness. In the end, it is not the moments of celebration that define a legacy. It is the choices made in the shadows, the silent battles, the quiet victories, the mornings a man gets up, even when everything inside him wants to give up, the words he speaks when it would be easier to stay silent, the times he forgives when bitterness would feel justified. All of it counts. All of it builds. All of it leaves a mark. Eternal impact isn't about being remembered by everyone. It's about being remembered by the right ones, the ones who knew your strength, not because of your platform, but because of your perseverance, the ones who saw you endure, and because of that, found the courage to keep going themselves. That is the kind of legacy that never fades. That is the power of endurance